Hey guys, welcome to the Digging Deeper podcast, where our hope is to dig a little bit deeper into that week's sermon here at the church, so that we might just dig a little bit deeper into our hearts. We are so glad that y'all joined us today, and as customary that we started last week, we're going to start backwards.
To
introduce ourselves.
Hey, I'm Judah, the guy in the chair.
I'm Jacob Belding. I'm the Connections Minister at First Baptist Hazel.
And my name is Chris Brown, and I'm the Associate Pastor here at First Baptist Hazel. Still first and last.
Yep.
Just getting the jewels in my crown, ready to go. Okay, all right. It is Palm Sunday week. Well, I guess, was last week Palm Sunday week, or is this Sunday?
It's Holy Week.
It's Holy Week. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Gotcha.
I'm using wrong phraseology. So last Sunday was Palm Sunday. Mm-hmm. This upcoming Sunday is Easter Sunday, and Holy Week in between. Yes. There we go. All right, we're using the right terminology. It's a sandwich. It's a Easter sandwich. So that being said, this past Sunday was Palm Sunday, meaning we're going to talk about Jesus coming into Jerusalem, right? That's the typical... I forgot to start my timer. That's the typical Palm Sunday topic, right? What's going on as Jesus comes into Jerusalem. And do you have any general thoughts before we get into it?
Well, I have a lot of thoughts.
you have a lot of thoughts, but they're like part of the sermon.
Palm Sunday is great.
Yeah.
And, I really, I do like when there's, anytime that in the church calendar that there's an opportunity to have a relevant sermon or message. Mm-hmm. I think it's always a good thing, right?
It's like on Halloween, you get to preach about spirits.
Right.
Is that part of the liturgical calendar?
It is.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Halloween?
Yeah.
Oh.
All Hallows Eve.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then the next day is All Saints Day.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because Reformation.
Yeah.
Or is that, is that part of the liturgical calendar?
All Saints Day and All Hallows Eve is.
Uh-huh.
But it doesn't focus so much on trick-or-treating and dressing up like whatever.
Yeah. It's more talking about how you shouldn't do it. Yeah. Anyways, quick poll. So Palm Sunday, everyone does it a little bit different. I went to a church one time that they did the swinging of the palm branches. Mm-hmm. Have you ever seen that, Judah?
Nope.
I don't remember what it made. I think it was like, I can't. I think they had different people set up to like carry in like symbolic items, and then they gave like people like palm branches, and as they walked down the aisles, they were
waving
like,
it.
And did the pastor come down on like a donkey or something?
No, I don't think so. But I think the choir sang the Hosanna, like a song sing about Hosanna, and I think we should do that. It's a missed opportunity.
You know what's a missed opportunity is the song choice.
Yeah.
For Sunday, this past Sunday. There's is it from the 90s? It just sounds like a 90s song. The blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna, Hosanna. You know,
I know the song.
Okay, yeah.
I'm guessing it's from the 90s.
Yeah.
Sounds about right.
I remember singing that in church growing up.
Yeah.
It was fun. Missed opportunity. What happened?
Now that I think about it, did we even do a song with the name Hosanna in it?
I don't think so.
Oh,
and there's
missed
so
it.
many.
We missed it.
Next year.
I blame Roxanne.
That's right. It's probably her fault.
For that. But next year we need more songs with Hosanna.
All of them.
And more palm branches.
Yes.
And just waving them. Yeah, be great.
That's right. We will we'll turn up the heat in the sanctuary so it'll feel good.
Yeah.
Waving the...
And Judah can come in on the donkey. Yeah.
We have a dying palm tree in our front yard.
Yeah, save it. Yeah. Save it, man.
Save the branches.
Yeah, save the branches. I'm sure we can find a donkey or like a miniature horse or something that you can ride in on. Anyways, has nothing to do with anything. Oh, I guess it does have a little bit to do with it because it was Palm Sunday. Right. And the whole sermon was about Jesus' entry into Jerusalem. The title of the sermon was "The King is Coming." And really, it's analyzing this entry into Jerusalem, and the way Pastor Lee approached it, interesting look at it, is that he was looking more at how the crowds reacted to Jesus. Mm-hmm. So throughout these passages, we get little glimpses into different crowds thinking about Jesus coming in. And the kind of thesis question, I guess, if you will, is what crowd are you in? So in this, as we analyze these different thoughts surrounding Jesus, which one aligns with us and which one should we align with, really is kind of how it is. And so that's what we're going to get into today. There's a few different passages that he opened up with, but we're going to save the first one for later and get into Matthew 21, 6 through 11.
Would it be fair to say that the first shall be last in this case?
In this case, yes. The first passage shall be last, which is actually appropriate because it's the end of Revelation.
Yeah.
So, okay, Matthew 21, 6 through 11. Jacob, you want to take that?
Yep, I got it. All right, the disciples went and did as Jesus had directed them. They brought the donkey and the colt and put on them their cloaks, and he sat on them. Most of the crowd spread their cloaks on the road, and others cut branches from the trees and spread them on the road. And the crowds that went before him and that followed him were shouting, Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest. And when he entered Jerusalem, the whole city was stirred up, saying, Who is this? And the crowd said, This is the prophet Jesus from Nazareth of Galilee.
All right, Jesus' triumphant entry into Jerusalem right here. Now, Pastor really kind of set up some context for us, and I've never pieced it together that this was going on, but right before this happened, Lazarus was raised, which is a big deal, right?
Huge.
Yeah, that, a man was brought back to life, and it's quite poetic that was one of the last miracles they did going into the Passion Holy Week.
Yeah, Jesus says, I'm the resurrection and the life. And then, we have Lazarus.
Yeah.
Like, oh, wow.
And all this was to demonstrate what was about to happen on an even greater scale.
Oh, yeah.
With Jesus. And so that actually really does kind of explain the excitement.
Oh, yeah.
I guess is I was going to say hysteria, but hysteria is probably not the right word. Excitement surrounding Jesus' entry as he's going, because Jesus, in his 3 years of ministry, had lots of ups and downs in terms of dealing with crowds. There were times that crowds were surrounding him and wanted to be around him and follow him, and then other times they were like, "No, I don't want anything to do with that guy." Went from praising him to trying to kill him. He had quite an adventurous 3 years, and this is one of those times that the crowds were very much in full force, ready to go as he entered Jerusalem. Now, as Pastor,
and he had been to Jerusalem before several times, and there was the crowds are even on the other occasions when he's there, the crowds are looking for him and they're wondering if he's going to be there, and but this is a whole different level.
Which begs the question, why?
Lazarus.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yes, Lazarus.
The immediate, yeah.
Yes, I was going to more get into him riding in on the donkey.
Okay, yes,
yeah. The Lazarus thing, I think prompted that. But then I think him getting on the donkey and riding in, just shot it through the stratosphere. Because this is a prophecy.
That's right.
Fulfilled prophecy. Zechariah 9:9 says, Rejoice greatly, daughter Zion. By the way, Zechariah's Old Testament. Prophecy about Jesus. Rejoice greatly, daughter Zion. Shout in triumph, daughter Jerusalem. Look, your king is coming to you. He is righteous and victorious, humble and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. So we got a explicit prophecy here about the Messiah coming in on a donkey. Jesus says, "Give me a donkey." The way of the donkey. That's an inside joke. If you didn't see the video from Sunday, there's a statement in the video. It's the way of the donkey. And I don't know. That phrase just makes me laugh. I don't know why.
Chris latched onto that, and it's been great.
I just love that phrase, the way of the donkey. And so Jesus got on the donkey and rode in, which is why everyone starts saying, Hosanna to the Son of God, because they're like, this is it. This is the time. So everyone that's been following Jesus as the Messiah is like, all right, here we go. And everyone that hasn't been following him is like, what's going on? Oh my gosh, this is it. It's the time.
Yep. When there's in our small groups, we're working through the Gospel of Mark, and one of the questions from this past week points out that it's not just Zechariah 9:9 that we see this prophecy. That's the prophecy of Jesus coming into Jerusalem as a king. It's peppered throughout the Old Testament. I mean, Psalm 118, the same wording. We see the same wording. Save us, we pray, is what they're saying. And then Hosanna is a Greek transliteration of the Hebrew of what that means, what that sounds like. Isaiah 9, 1-7, Jeremiah 23. And so it's all the question for our small groups was, what are these Old Testament writings looking forward to? And then, how do we understand these in light of the triumphal entry? And it's really about the Jewish people looking forward to the Lord coming as the Davidic king, who would come to Jerusalem mounted on a donkey and to save his people. So this is like all in the background of, or maybe even in the front of their minds of what's happening.
Yeah, and this is like the tricky aspect for them, because they have these prophecies and they knew these prophecies, and so they knew this meant something, right? But you used the phrase, they were looking forward to him coming in and saving his people. That's where the rub happens.
Well, that's even part of these passages is that he's going to come and defeat his enemies, and he's going to rule righteously and justly. And then, so what you're getting at? Okay, what enemy are we talking
what
about?
does that mean?
Yeah.
Because I think everyone, or a lot of the people then assumed what that was going to mean, and so you got the Jews who were under captivity and rule of the Romans. So in their mind, that's the enemy, right? And so what's the Messiah going to do? He's going to come in, defeat the enemy, the Romans, and restore power back to Israel and make Israel the nation state it once was back in the Old Testament. Unfortunately, that was not Jesus' plan at all. And you actually see this, one of my favorite passages, I might even teach on this after Easter, is Acts 1. I think it's 1. Yeah, Acts 1. When Jesus is already resurrected, and he comes to the disciples, and they're like, "Is this the time that you're going to restore your kingdom?
How about now, Jesus?"
Yeah, and they still don't get it. At the end of it all, like they thought, okay, Jesus is going to come in, conquer the Romans. Then, okay, he got crucified. Oh no, and he got resurrected. Yes, okay, great. Okay, now is now when you're going to destroy the Romans? and so they're just constantly going back to that. And anyways, it's a constant misconception with the Jews, because they built up in their mind that Jesus was going to be a physical conquering leader, king. Right. And turns out Jesus had a much bigger, profound enemy that he was going after.
Yeah, and that's like in John's gospel when he's being questioned by Pilate, and Pilate asks him, "Are you a king?" And Jesus says, "My kingdom is not of this world." I mean, he pretty well sums it up right there.
Yeah. He's like, "I'm no threat to you. I don't care what y'all are doing. Y'all keep doing what you're doing. I'm not aiming at y'all."
He's like, "In fact, it's part of my plan that y'all are in charge."
Yeah, right.
It's like, you think that you're crucifying me because
now, depending on your view of Revelation, that might be aiming at the Romans. That's a can of worms we won't open. Anyways, so there was all this misconception about what it meant for Jesus to be riding in as a king into Jerusalem on this donkey, which spurred many different thoughts. And most of the thoughts that were spurred were based on that wrong misconception. And so Pastor Lee gets into the different reactions that the crowds had to Jesus. And there's 4 of them. And this is how Pastor Lee describe them, and then I'm going to rename them because I came up with my own names. So you got the Roman crowd, you got the expectant crowd, you got the Pharisee crowd, and the diverse crowd. Here's my names for them. You've got the amused crowd, the circus crowd, the angry crowd, and the seeking crowd. We're going to get into why I like those names better, mainly just because I like using the word circus. But let's get into these. So the first crowd that Pastor Lee points out is the Roman crowd. I call it, again, the amused crowd, because as Jesus is entering in on this donkey, this is very similar, Pastor Lee mentioned, to how like conquering warriors would enter in.
Yeah, the Roman triumph. It was this grand parade, and Pastor Lee did a good job describing how that went down. All the spoils of war, the slaves would be, defeated enemies would be paraded through the streets, and here comes the emperor, or it could have been a general, didn't have to be the emperor, that led the campaign and the war, the fight. Was there in the parade, and sometimes they'd throw, coins and some of the spoils out to the crowd. It helped with their popularity if they were going to make a play to be emperor, maybe, if they weren't already.
Kind of like Prince Ali.
Exactly like Prince Ali.
I reference Aladdin way too much.
I do too.
In this podcast.
Yeah. I do just generally. It's that's great. Yeah. Like, hey, look at all of our cool stuff that we got, you guys. I mean,
by the way, so whenever they redid Aladdin and everyone was like horrified because like no one can do it like Robin Williams, I kind of like it.
I thought it was good.
I thought it was good.
That was probably the best live action Disney movie. It's up there.
Yeah, I thought Will Smith did good.
Oh yeah, he was awesome. Yeah. But yeah, so that's the image. I mean, it's like a parade, like the what is it? The homecoming parade, I think.
Like
here
the Disney
Hazel.
parade.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, but instead of throwing out coins and showing off our slaves and defeated enemies and all of the plunder that we've taken, we like give out candy, and we make cool floats for people to look at. I mean, it's the same idea, and
things don't change much.
That's right.
About history, right?
The more they change, the more they stay the same.
Yeah.
And so the Romans they knew what a triumph was, and for them, even though it's one man on a donkey, right? The way that the crowds are reacting to him and probably even following him through the streets, it would have looked similar to them, which puts them on, red alert.
Yeah, which leads to one of two reactions to them. One, and I think Pastor Lee mentioned this, one, they're either amused, which is why I say the amused crowd.
Yeah.
So at best they're amused and they're like, that's cute. Like,
right.
And at worst they're threatened.
Right.
That will cause them to actually take action and stomp us into the ground, which was the Pharisees' concern. But we'll get into that in a minute. I think they were more on the amused side, mainly because we don't, in Jesus' whole trial, if you will, and leading up to this, you never really get the impression that Rome really wanted to crucify Jesus.
Right.
You really more get the impression that they were being pressured into it by the Jews. And if anything, Rome, whether it be the soldiers or the leaders of Rome, were more just like making it a joke more than anything.
Yeah. Yeah. We see that with them mocking Jesus the way that they did. And, it's funny you mentioned that because I can't remember which class it was that I was taking. Maybe it was New Testament 1 or something like that. And the professor had us read it was a historical, like biblical fiction. It was sort of like what could have happened, behind the scenes with this triumphal entry throughout Holy Week, culminating in the crucifixion. And it was an interesting read, let's just say. But the way that the author, I don't remember who it was, presented it, was that the Romans actually, with this triumphal entry of Jesus, are like hyper threatened by Jesus because of other Jewish rebellions and things. So it's really Pilate wants to look like he's not, he doesn't want to crucify Jesus. He doesn't want to go after him because he's worried about crowd control. And so he and the Jewish leaders are happy to sort of, make it happen together. But Pilate's really the one who's driving the whole thing. And, as a biblical or historical fiction sort of a book, it was interesting. But, it seemed like his whole motive was to, really stab at anti-Semitism and things like that.
Yeah, and I think
like it didn't seem it held up to the biblical record very well.
Yeah, because like the thing with Pilate is, he washed his hands, and legend has it that what was that the legend surrounding him is that he was like constantly washing his hands from that point forward, because trying to like
get the blood off,
get the guilt off of himself. That's tradition, not actual thing. But he did wash his hands, basically saying like I don't want any part of this. Yeah. I'm handing it off to y'all. But I think it was more. I think he is correct in the sense of Pilate did it not because he actually was threatened by Jesus, but because he didn't want to deal with the Jews.
Right.
And there is that balance. You might say, well, they're Rome, they're in charge. Why don't they do it? Being in charge, like there's a balance that they would have to take into mind, because like what they don't want is that the more they have to like press their thumb down on their the people that they're ruling over, the more resources that takes, and the less productive that people group's going to be. And so there is that balancing. Neither here nor there. But we see, with the soldiers mocking Jesus. You see, with Herod, I didn't realize this until I looked into it. Herod was the first stop that Jesus went to in the trial process. And whenever Herod sent Jesus on to the next level, the Supreme Court, if you will, it says that he put a robe on him. And that's the robe that was ultimately like taken and gambled off and whatnot.
Not divided, but... that one was divided, wasn't it?
No, they cast lots for it.
Yeah, they cast lots for his tunic, right? That was one piece, but had something else divided that had a seam. Or
anyways, it was one of those things. It says that Herod gave him that as like a mocking aspect of like, you want to be king, you got to be dressed like a king, right? And so all along this path, you've got Rome looking at this as like, man, what a joke. Let's just play into the joke as we stomp you into the ground. Yeah. And so that's why I liked that. That's why I renamed it, and I like it as like the amused crowd, because as we pulled into this, the whole point of this sermon is asking, what crowd are you in?
Right.
And so as you look at Jesus presented as king, is your reaction to be amused at that? Which is kind of like the big like atheist reaction to Jesus is like it's a joke. It's more of a joke than anything. You got any thoughts?
No, I agree. That does tend to be sort of the atheist bent on which crowd that they might be categorized into. But I mean, there's a lot of other people that aren't that same way. It could be. People of other religions, even doesn't have to be atheist, and like, oh, what an interesting story,
right? Because
pat you on the head,
because it's almost the Rome, and whether or not they did this because they were actually threatened or because they just wanted to make a mockery of it. The result's still the same. Is in their ultimately sending Jesus to the death penalty, making a mockery of it, their goal, if you will, was to invalidate.
Yeah, 100%.
And you almost see that with atheists today is not only are you wrong, but we're going to make a mockery as to what you believe so as to like make everyone see how ridiculous this actually is.
Yeah. That's right. It's kind of like Pilate in John's Gospel. He made the inscription to put above Jesus on the cross, Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. And the Pharisees, the religious leaders that are really pushing for Jesus' crucifixion, they don't like that. They don't appreciate this, and so they go to Pilate and they say, don't write that he's the king of the Jews, write that he said he was the king of the Jews. And Pilate responds, what I've written. Basically, y'all are out of luck.
I don't remember that.
Oh, really?
Really, I don't. Interesting.
Yeah. And so, but the whole thing is a dig at the Jews. Like, like this is your king? guess what I'm going to do to him?
Right.
I'm going to have him crucified. What are you going to do about it? Kind of a thing.
Right, because again, everyone had different motives as to why they were going through this, and so the Rome was going about it like we're fine killing this guy if it's going to happen, but we're going to like devalidate everything that's going on.
100%.
I keep saying devalidate, invalidate everything that's going on.
I know what you mean.
I can't say words. Where the Pharisees, as we're going to get into in a second, they didn't want to invalidate what was going on, or I guess they did. They didn't want to invalidate the premise that there is going to be a Messiah. They just wanted to invalidate Jesus was the Messiah. Anyways, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves on that. But that's a good question to ask. And if you're listening to this podcast or if you're in church, you're probably not part of the amused crowd, would be my guess.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. You probably don't see Jesus as a joke unless you're being dragged here, in which that case, if you're finding yourself identifying with these guys, you might
think about it.
Think about it. Okay. Next crowd that we see, Pastor Lee calls the expectant crowd. I call it the circus crowd because they just want to show, right? And we see this multiple times throughout Jesus' ministry, that Jesus does something, some kind of miracle, and that spurs crowds to come around him. And they're not coming around him to actually see Jesus. They're coming around him to see the show that he's putting on, or to eat the food that he's providing, or so on and so forth.
Yeah, that's right. And there's again, going through this Mark study and in our small groups, it's pretty common to see Jesus. He's casting out demons. He's healing people. And Jesus tells these people, hey, you're forgiven. Take up your bed and walk, those sorts of things. And he says, don't, keep it to yourself. Don't tell everybody that.
The messianic secret.
Right. And the question is, well, why? Wouldn't Jesus want everybody to know that he's the Messiah? And then you see immediately after this guy, he's like, oh, okay, great. And then immediately goes and tells everybody what happened.
None of them ever listened to him.
They did a horrible job listening. They could not follow directions. But,
this is on a side note. Okay. In the Gospels, we're really bad at not listening to Jesus, because in the Gospels, they're like, don't tell anyone. And they go tell everyone. And Jesus tells us, hey, go tell everyone. Well, we don't tell anyone.
Right. Well, and that's exactly. And that was one of the results of that is Jesus couldn't just travel around openly preaching because he's mobbed by crowds everywhere he goes now. And
on a side note, is that a good evangelism tactic? Should we as a church say, don't go tell anyone about Jesus?
Reverse psychology.
Yeah, reverse psychology.
See what happens.
Y'all better not go invite people.
Not. Don't you dare invite anyone to Easter Sunday.
Yeah. If I hear a single one of y'all is telling someone about Jesus, church discipline.
We're gonna
straight to jail.
Straight to jail. Straight to jail. Yeah, those little Easter invite cards that we've been talking about the past couple of weeks. Just get rid of those. Don't get rid of them in the sense of give them to other people. Certainly, don't do that.
Don't do that. Don't do that. If I hear one person, we will close the church doors.
We'll see if it works. Record-breaking attendance Sunday. No joke, probably will be.
Yeah, right.
Lord willing.
Yeah. Anyways, as you were saying, repeat that statement before I got us off track.
Yeah. So the whole reason that Jesus is, tells these people that he heals, that he casts demons out of, to not go and tell literally everybody, is because then he's going to draw on this circus crowd. And I mean, to be fair, some of the people, I'm sure many of the people that were coming to him, they wanted healing, right? They wanted the demons to be cast out, right? They wanted these miracles to happen, right, which would benefit them. But then the question is, okay, why are you coming to Jesus? Yes, these are signs that the Messiah has come, that the blind have their eyes open, the lame walk, the deaf hear, all these great things. But is that the end of his ministry? No, right? There's more to it than just that. Those are all good things, right? And they point to him as the Messiah. They point forward to Revelation, basically, whenever we aren't affected by the fall anymore, at least in our bodies and things like that. But that's the point is he's coming to preach the gospel of the kingdom of God, and so which one is his primary purpose here?
Yeah.
It's that one.
Well, and this is the rub that Jesus at one point had with the Pharisees, is that they demanded a sign from him, and then he said, "A wicked and adulterous generation demands signs." Now, does he mean that he shouldn't have ever done miracles? No, he's been doing miracles, and that's kind of the point.
Right.
Is like, I've done all of this already. If you're not going to believe that, you're not, like, me doing anything here isn't going to cause you to believe anymore. And so it's like, if you demand a sign to believe in Jesus, that sign's not going to be enough, and you're going to demand another one.
Yeah.
Another one. I think is it Neil deGrasse Tyson? It was some famous atheist. Maybe it was Christopher Hitchens. Was in a debate, and they were debating on, was Jesus real? Is he king?
Sure.
Yeah. And the guy that he was debating just stopped and said, like, hey, if Jesus saw you, or if Jesus came to you, like you said, you want tangible evidence. If Jesus was to appear to you and say, I am God, I am king, would you worship him, or would you dismiss it? And he said, I would dismiss it.
Well, yeah.
It's like, well, then what's the point? It's
Right.
it's like if you're demanding evidence, but if evidence was presented to you, you're flat out saying you wouldn't believe the evidence. What's the point of any of this? And that's really ultimately kind of the one aspect of the circus crowd is they're not actually there for God. They're there to see miracles.
Right.
They're there to see signs. They're there because Lazarus was healed, and maybe if we're around, we'll be able to see it. And if this was today, they would all have their TikToks out.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%.
Getting it. But to tie it to Scripture, John 12:18 says, "This is also why the crowd met him, because they heard he had done this sign." And so they've heard the miracles. They want to come see more. And again, pulling it back to the question of the sermon, what crowd are you in? Are you part of the circus crowd? Is your relationship to Jesus solely based on what Jesus can do for you?
Like
or
benefits.
Benefits for it. And because that's what they were looking for, right? And so...
And that one is in danger for us in the church.
That is absolutely a danger for us in the church, that we see, as I mentioned a few weeks ago, we see God as this cosmic vending machine that, we got this like quid pro quo with God that, hey, I come to church and, you give me blessings,
That's
right? I tithe, you give me blessings. I do whatever, you give me blessings. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep. All right. Anything else on that one?
Yeah, just wanted to show. I think we pretty well covered that one.
Yep. All right. Next one is the Pharisee crowd. I'm going to call them the angry crowd, which I think Lee did refer to them as the angry crowd at one point.
Angry mob.
Angry mob. Yeah.
I think. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay. So this one is in John 12:19, just one verse later after the circus crowd. Then the Pharisees said to one another, "You see, you have accomplished nothing. Look, the world has gone after him." And so the Pharisees were very concerned that people were following Jesus. Why were they concerned?
Well, there's several reasons. They've already at this point decided that Jesus, no, absolutely not. We're not following him.
This is just a daily stand meeting that they have because about how can we kill Jesus today?
Yeah, pretty much. And this is already part of the plan.
Yeah.
At this point is they've been plotting for a while now how they're going to go about having him killed. They even at this point, if I remember right, they've already talked about how it was either right before this or right after they're talking about how they also need to kill Lazarus as well.
I missed that one too. I'm just missing so many things. God.
Yeah, like I said, I can't remember if it's before, kind of on the heels of the. I think it is. I think it's in John 11, where the Pharisees, they hear, right, because everybody's buzzing about, oh my gosh, Lazarus was dead 4 days.
Oh, some of them were there.
Yeah, you're right. But this is it's not just reserved for them, right?
Yeah.
Like it's spreading. Word is spreading pretty quick, and the high priest says, basically, Jesus needs to die, Lazarus needs to die. It's better for one man, Jesus, to die for the nation than the whole nation perish.
And that was their thing. I'm so glad you mentioned that verse. they in their minds thought they were doing a righteous thing.
Yeah,
here.
they did.
Because here was in the minds of the Pharisees. So again, they're under the rule of the Romans, and they know that God has promised a Messiah, and in their minds, that Messiah was to liberate them out of Roman rule and restore the nation state. That is a one bullet gun right there. So if you come in and try to throw a rebellion against the Romans, and it's not the right time or the right guy, what's Rome going to do?
They're going to level the city. They're going to kill everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to be ugly.
Yes. And so in their mind, this is not the guy. He's going to start a rebellion. Rome's going to come and take away everything from us. So we need to stop this guy before that happens.
Right.
So this was like literally worst case scenario for them. Oh no, he is going into Jerusalem as king.
Yep.
He's about to do this. He's about to try.
And even more so, I think they would have been on board. They would have been more on board with Jesus if Jesus didn't absolutely like pick them apart.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, woe to you, blind guides, talking about like, those woes that he pronounces on them. Jesus is, so maybe from the Pharisees' perspective, like, oh, when the Messiah comes, he's going to be on our side. Like, we've been doing all these righteous checklist sorts of things. We're keeping the law and then keeping all of these other laws to be sure that we don't break the law. And we are awesome, basically. And then Jesus comes and he's like, y'all aren't that awesome, dude. Y'all are not that awesome. And they're like, what? How dare he? Yeah.
We are as awesome as we think we are.
Yeah, that's right. 100%. You don't think we're awesome? You must die.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, the Pharisees are, clearly they're jealous, for power. They want honor for themselves and glory for themselves. We see that peppered throughout the Gospels as well. And so here comes, Jesus, and they, it's the irony is just incredible. In both of those. So here in John 12:19, and then before when they're talking about killing Jesus for the sake of the nation, it's ironic, right? They're meaning it in one way, but clearly God's using this in a totally different way. Same thing here, right? Oh my gosh, the whole world's gone after him. This is like terrible, right? Well, we're about to see, especially when we get into Acts, that the whole world is going after him for sure. And Lee mentioned that as well.
Yeah. And this is actually a very relevant question. So again, are you part of this crowd or are you part of the angry crowd like the Pharisees were? It's very relevant to churches today, particularly dying churches. So typically what you see in dying churches is they know they're dying and they know they need to turn it around. But then when anyone comes in to help turn them around, what do? They get angry because their systems of tradition that they have in place are now being challenged, right? It's like, oh, we're not singing the same songs that we used to sing. We're not sitting in the same chairs we used to sit in. We're not having enough programs for us that we used to have. Why are all these new people? Why are they getting all the special treatment and all this stuff? And one of the things that the Pharisees had, like you mentioned, is like they had their own system in which they were in power, and with Jesus coming in, they were being stripped of their power and it was going to someone else, which is a threat to their way of life and how they were going. And I think a lot of churches have to ask themselves that question of, do you really want to see the gospel go out, or are you angry because for the gospel to go out, that's going to strip you of some of your glory and power?
Yeah, that's right. And I think we could even apply it. I think it's a great way to apply it. The angry crowd. I think another way is, if you look at the heart behind the Pharisees, the scribes, the religious leaders, it has to do in a big way with pride and ego. And hey, we're the best. Look at us. And so even within, as individuals within the church, we need to be careful of that same way of thinking where maybe in our small group or maybe, leading a particular ministry, it becomes more about us than it does about honoring God and glorifying God. I think that's something that we all ought to be watching out for because, pride's the big one.
And that's where you got to really be introspective because you can have an angry, prideful heart and cloak it.
Oh, yeah.
and like, I'm not angry. I'm just fervent for God. Like, I'm not prideful. I just don't want to see, these things, get changed because this glorifies God. And it's like, no, you're just
mad.
You're just mad. you just want what you want,
Yeah.
and you're mad that you're not getting what you want. And so, which again is the exact same way they were thinking.
Yes.
They thought that they were being zealous for God. Turns out they were crucifying God.
Yeah. Literally.
Yeah.
Not good.
All right. Don't identify with that one. If you do, you can examine your heart. All right. That's the angry crowd. Last one is the diverse crowd. I'm going to call this one the seeking crowd. And the reason that Pastor Lee called this the diverse crowd is because they were truly diverse in terms of culturally, racially. They were diverse people. John 12, 20 through 21. Now some Greeks, non-Jews, if you will, were among those who went up to worship at the festival. So they came to Philip, who was from Bethsaida in Galilee, and requested of him, "Sir, we want to see Jesus." And so this is actually interesting because the vast majority of Jesus' ministry was to the Jews. It was to Israel. And now in his triumphant entry, all of a sudden, a lot of non-Jews are coming in here. Is there a greater theological significance to this? I'm kind of fishing a little bit.
So I think it's I think this is pointing forward to the mission to the Gentiles after the resurrection. There is, I'm blanking right now on
So there's this concept throughout the Gospels of how the gospel is sent out. And so we even see this some in the Mark study that we've been doing on Sunday morning, is that Jesus came first to his own. This is explained in John 1, that Jesus first came to his own, and his own rejected him. Right? And then Romans 1 lays out that the gospel goes out first to the Jew, then to the Gentile. And so you see in Jesus' ministry, it's almost exclusively to Israel, right? Because he was coming to his own as an Israelite. And then the Jews not only rejected the gospel, but crucified him. And through that, the gospel is now going out to the Gentiles, as Romans 9, 10, 11 start to lay out. This is kind of a complicated, abstract concept stretched out through the Gospels. But it's the parable of the wedding banquet, I think, best illustrates this, that Jesus said that that there was a wedding and that the guy organizing the wedding banquet sent out the invitations, but every time they sent out the invitations to the people who were invited, not only did they reject the invitation, but they killed the messenger. So the guy putting on the wedding banquet said, fine, take these invitations, send them out to everyone, not to the people who were invited, but to everyone that you see. Invite them. Those who show up dressed in the right wedding garments will be entered in. And that's a perfect description of what we see in the Gospels. And the gospel going out is that the gospel first went out to the Jews, not only when Jesus came, but all throughout the Old Testament with the prophets. And they rejected God's message and killed his messengers, most notably Jesus. And so the gospel went out to everyone, to the Gentiles.
So in John 12, just after the verse that you read, we have John 12, 20 through 21, and then right after that, Philip went and told Andrew. Andrew and Philip went and told Jesus, and Jesus answered them. So this is the answer to the Greeks seeking Jesus. The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. Truly, truly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. And then he continues on. And so I think part of what Jesus is saying is like the time for the Greeks is coming. The time for the Gentiles is coming. And it's going to take Jesus' death, right? And just like a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone, but then if it dies, it bears much fruit, right? There's seeds that are planted. And so even in the structure of Acts, reflects the Great Commission and how the disciples are going to be witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and then to the ends of the earth, right? And Acts follows that structure, and so there's a pretty clear. It's pretty clear in Scripture that Jews first, then really it's the rest of Israel, the Samaritans that have mixed in with the other people, and then to the Gentiles. And so there's a time, right, for the Greeks to be brought in, for sure.
Yep.
That doesn't mean that there's not we don't see good examples of Gentile believers throughout the Gospels, because we do, right? There's individuals that
and they were called God-fearers.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, I'm even thinking of the Syro-Phoenician woman who comes and asks Jesus to heal her daughter, or
which there you even see this concept in that one, right, where he says don't give crumbs to the dog that are meant for the children, and she's like, but even the dogs get the crumbs from the children, kind of illustrating that we're going to see this same concept play out, that this is meant for the Israelites, but it's going to spread out beyond the Israelites.
Yep.
Which is really what that was supposed to be from the beginning.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? That's something, if you don't know a more fuller picture of the Israelites in the Old Testament, it's easy to walk away with thinking, the Israelites were an exclusive club in the Old Testament and you had to be an Israelite to be part of it. That's actually not true. In all of the covenants, there are provisions for people outside of Israel to come into the fold.
Right.
And so the goal was never to create an exclusive club, but to be an inclusive club, but the Israelites took it and made it exclusive.
Right. So the Israelites were supposed to, on God's terms, be inclusive. So the Israelites, right? Yeah, they're supposed to follow the laws of that God gave to Moses, and then from there, right, we have God's promise to Abraham and Abraham's mission, therefore Israel's mission, which is to be a blessing to all the nations, right? But it was supposed to be on God's terms, not on, we'll intermarry with these pagan
right, yeah, because...
So I just want to clarify what inclusive
yes, because those, which as you can see...
I know what you mean.
Yeah, those times where they're intermarrying, they weren't trying to grow the God's kingdom.
No.
Because with it they brought in all these foreign gods and all that.
Yeah, that's right. And then they start worshiping them, and then
which is
Israel
funny. For the longest time, people would use those passages as interracial marriage is bad, and it's like you're missing the whole point.
Right.
He's not saying don't bring in foreign wives because of their skin color. It's because they're foreign gods.
Yep.
Moses had a foreign wife.
Yep.
God had no problem with that because she was with God.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
she even went and executed the circumcision on her sons.
Yeah, right.
She went that far. It's like, oh man, she's serious, man.
I saw a bit. I think it's Michael Jr. I don't know. It's some comedian. He's talking about the circumcision covenant, and he comes back. Moses comes back, and, or was it Moses or was it? Is Moses or Abraham? It comes back and they're to the servants, and it's like, hey, we got to circumcise. He's like, wait, tell me exactly what God said. He said foreskin. Are you sure he didn't say your skin? It's like, oh man, a lot of faith there. Anyways,
yeah.
Yes, Jesus, God, the Bible was diverse before diverse was cool.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Or before it was hijacked.
Yeah. Anyways, all that to be said is this seeking crowd that was coming for Jesus was actually coming for the right reasons. They were coming to actually see Jesus. And it's ironic and perfectly in sync with the progression of the gospel that the ones who were actually coming to seek out Jesus weren't even Jews.
Yeah.
But they were Gentiles.
Yep.
Which, like you said, is a door creaking open into what Acts is going to be. Anyways, so
and then clarifying note: the plot of the Pharisees and religious leaders to kill Lazarus is in the beginning of John 12.
Oh, okay.
And it's before the triumphal entry.
There we go. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So
clarify.
Hopefully you identify with that crowd, that you're seeking out Jesus for Jesus, not for what he can do for you. Like you're not mad at him because he's trying to take things away from you. You're not amused about him, trying to make a mockery of him. You're actually seeking out Jesus. That's the crowd we want to be a part of. Now, to tie that in with how Lee ended it
and began it,
he began it with Revelation 19, which talks about the second coming of Jesus and how it's not going to be meek and mild as a baby, or nice and gentle and full of humility on a donkey, but it's going to be as a conquering warrior on the steed, ready to go battle, ready to,
strike down his enemies and
restore the kingdom. That's the time. Kingdom. That's where we're going to restore the kingdom. Still probably in a different way than they imagined it. But all that say is all these crowds, or most of these crowds, had their way with Jesus in one way or another. Like the circus crowd, they got the circus they wanted to see, right? The Roman crowd, they got the amusement that they wanted out of him. The Pharisees, they got the death out of Jesus that they wanted. And the seeking crowd ultimately got to see Jesus. They all had their way with Jesus, and Jesus allowed that to happen. They didn't make Jesus do anything that he wasn't willing to do. It was all for a reason, that he might be crucified, that was the whole point of Jesus coming, was for this moment. Plot twist. Jesus is on that, not because they put him up there, but because he willingly went up there. But that was in his first coming to achieve that very specific purpose. But in the second coming, it's going to be to achieve a very different purpose.
Yeah, different story.
Yeah, different story. Anyways, any final thoughts?
I think, I think we need, if we're going to have depictions of Jesus, like the most popular ones, obviously, are the ones where he has come meek and mild and gentle and humble. I think we need more of him as the conquering king.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's like, this is he has conquered, right? In one sense. That's where we're at.
I want to see Jesus with the tattoo. Yeah. Right on his thigh. His name's written on his thigh.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Right. But
it doesn't use the word tattoo.
Right.
For all you purists out there.
But yeah, riding on a white horse coming back in power and authority.
I want to see the tongue. Is it the tongue of fire? Or what is it? It's like his tongue was like a sword.
Oh yeah,
or something like that. Or his eyes were fire.
Yes.
I'm thinking of Revelation 2.
Yep.
Where it's describing Jesus.
Yeah, and that was in the passage.
Oh, was in that one too.
Yeah, nice. 13. He is clothed in a robe dipped in blood.
Yeah, let's see that depiction.
It's like, yeah, man.
It's like, have you seen Carrie, that old movie?
I haven't. I think I started watching it one time years ago. Like I was probably a teenager. And like pretty early, I'm like, no, I'm not watching this.
I probably watched it when I was like 8.
Oh, really?
I don't know. It's an old movie.
Yeah.
And I remember watching it at one point because I remember that scene where all that blood falls on him. And it has nothing to do with anything.
Clothes dipped in, or robe dipped in blood.
Yeah. For those of you that make it this far, get the behind the scenes talk of watching horror movies. Anyways, man, we are already 50 minutes in. We gotta wrap this up. All right. The king is coming. 4 different crowds reacted to Jesus as he entered into Jerusalem. The Roman crowd that was amused with him, the expectant crowd that just wanted a circus from him, the Pharisee crowd that was just angry with him, and the diverse crowd that was actually truly seeking him. What crowd are you part of? Hopefully it's the seeking one. But with that being said, we're now going to move into the bad doctrine of the week.
It's the bad doctrine of the week.
All right, Jacob, you've got a bad doctrine for us. It's a video.
Yes.
Do you need to preface anything, or are we just going to dive straight in?
Let's just dive straight in.
All right, here we go.
And we'll watch just the first 3 minutes, maybe end at 3:04.
Yeah.
3:04.
I haven't seen this before, so we're going to enjoy this together.
This beautiful work that is worship, this beautiful relationship that is worship between us and the divine, this beautiful way of mutual adoration between us and us, right? This way of being with people that changes us and being with the divine essence as she changes us. What if God worships me? Can you say that with me? What if God worships me? Now, you don't have to say it if you feel uncomfortable, because it can feel a little uncomfortable, right? Especially when we don't really understand and live into who God has called us to be and what God is to us and has called us to be to God. A God who worships me is quite the statement. I know, but follow me. Now, I get it. We've started to worship a very big heteronormative white Jesus that we constantly thank for standing between us and a mean God. But really, who, what, when, and why? Worship has become so God-centered that it risks the subjective colliding of our own things, our biases, etc., and often takes from the purity of God's mutual affection for us. Sometimes we have this wall up that's just between me and God, but if God does not show us how to be with our neighbor, then where is God? Because worship is less for God, I believe, and more for us. Intimacy. What if worship is us on the mountain of transfiguration? This space where God spoke, that God was well pleased. This place where God spoke about God's Son in such a way that the light shone on him and God looked and said, wow, oh, how I worship him. The beauty of what I've created. What if worship is the confidence that is spoken to us by God? What if worship is God in the garden that notices them even when they try to hide? What if worship is Genesis 3:8 that says, when God says, where are you? And who told you that you were naked? Who told you that there was a flaw in your beauty? The God who meets us and keeps confirming that who we are is good enough. What if that's worship? What if you not worshiping didn't stop God from worshiping you? Finding identity.
There's a lot more.
Yeah, but that's good. That's good. That's more than enough.
Yeah.
So I will preface, now that we've seen it, obviously it's been edited, right? The video's cut together. So that's not ideal. However.
Yeah. Okay. General thoughts. First off, man, he's hitting all the buzzwords, man. Heteronormative white Jesus. I don't even know what that had to do with anything, but it just got thrown in there. Okay. I think I'm going to be charitable here. I think he's just using wrong terms. Best case scenario, he's using the wrong term. He's using the word worship in a way that doesn't mean the word worship. I think because what he's saying is like, okay, what if it's not about us worshiping God? What if it's about God worshiping us? And to that I say, show me some receipts. I'm gonna need some Bible passages to show that God is worshiping us and that we're not worshiping God. And the things that he quotes was, God saying to Jesus, God the Father saying to God the Son, you are my son with whom I am well pleased. And then he references Adam and Eve in the garden. It's like, who told you that your beauty wasn't enough, or however he said it. And he's using those as like God worshiping us. And those, I don't think that's what's happening in those cases.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with no.
Yeah. Now, if he was to say, what if God is, seeking a relationship with us, or what if God is, what if God made us in his image, and so he sees value in us, and he, cares about us, and he wants to comfort us, and he wants to guide us, like, then I might be closer to it. But he keeps using the word worship us, And that's not what that word means. Worship, obviously, is a coming down, bowing down before, recognizing, God as, above us, and that doesn't work in the reverse.
Correct.
Right. And so that's the most charitable view of this. The most uncharitable view of this is just the complete reversal of we are trying to elevate ourselves above God and now make God the one that satisfies our needs. Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's my knee-jerk reaction thoughts.
Yeah, he had a moment where he said, "All right, say it with me. God worships me." Are you a little uncomfortable? That makes sense. Let me explain to you. I'm thinking, you can't. I'm not sure you can explain your way out of that one.
Yeah. I will say I like the go and throw that back up there for a second, Judah. I like that he has just this big MacBook. I'm just right in the middle of the thing.
Don't get too excited. It's Windows.
Oh, is it Windows?
It's a PC.
Oh, it's kind of far away, so I can't see it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. No, that makes sense. That makes complete sense. All right.
Shots fired.
Yeah. That's one thing that obviously this guy, I don't know if he's the pastor of their church or just a guest speaker or whatnot, but clearly this church has a specific doctrine. Hopefully he's not going, because he's going way off the rails if they don't have this doctrine. But I'm always very intrigued when the crowds, as we talked about throughout this passage, just go along with it. They're like, say this with me, this. And you see this all the time. Have you seen that clip of Kenneth Copeland doing the hair grow trick?
Is he casting a spell again?
Kind of. So it's in that kind of name it, claim it theology thing where he's telling people if you want your hair to grow, tell your hair to grow. And so he puts his hands on his head. He's like, everyone do this with me. Put your hands on your head. Say, hair grow, hair grow. We'll have to do that for our own bad doctrine of the week. But it's just him doing this, and everyone in the crowd is doing it with him. And then it cuts to this bald guy.
Yeah, I guess he'd put Rogaine out of business if that was
I know,
case,
right? But it just makes me wonder, how, to use Bible terminology in a not good way, how much of a sheep do you have to be to just blindly follow?
Yeah.
It's so for this guy, even for the most liberal progressive theology people to make the statement, God worships me, that's even extreme for that far left progressive theological standpoint, which is why I think everyone in the congregation was like, yeah, I guess I'll say it. And I clearly he could sense their hesitation to say it, which shows that even he knows it's kind of a ridiculous statement.
Could be just trying to be shocking. I don't know. It's on one hand, being, charitable. If the first time I saw this, I was like, what? What is he saying? This is also the trick with being discerning and what's bad doctrine and what's not is, there may be, there's a hint of truth in some of what's said or what this guy says or any false doctrine or false teaching. But then there's a lot of also oftentimes subtle bad doctrine at the same time. And so that's the tricky part.
And that is a tricky part. And that's, that's how Satan operated. I think we talked about that a few weeks ago. That's how Satan operated with Jesus. That's how Satan operated with Adam and Eve. That's how Satan operates. He takes glimmers of truth and twists it just enough that it sounds right, but it's destructive. Yeah. And you got to be careful whenever you're listening to teachers, and even myself and yourself as we teach. It is so easy. You can use little quick inserts to change the complete meaning of a passage. Yeah. And sometimes not even in a harmful way, but just in an ignorance way, or And you just got to be really careful. I do that a lot, not take passage out of context, but as I'm preparing, like I'll look at a passage and I'll think long and hard. If I'm like on the fence of like, does this passage actually mean that? Not that what I'm teaching is like bad, but it's like, does this passage specifically support this statement? And I'll have to think long and hard. And if the answer ultimately is no, then I'm like, I can't use that passage.
Yep.
Because I don't want to eisegete, which is what that's called. I don't want to take God's word and twist it, even for a good, quote unquote, good purpose, to support what I want to say. It's so easy. And so in the best case scenario, you're teaching good doctrine with wrong passages. In the worst case scenario, you're teaching bad doctrine with passages, and people who aren't super, Bible thumper, they'll just soak it all up because the guy on the stage is God put him in authority and he knows more than me. He's been to school. I haven't been to school for that. And so it's like, I guess he's right. And so who's going to go? This guy didn't even reference scriptures. I mean, he referenced loosely passages.
Yeah.
But even in the way that he said the Adam and Eve thing, it's like, who told you that your beauty wasn't enough?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not what it said.
Right.
It's like, he said, who told you that you were naked? That's a completely different statement. Like when he says, who told you your beauty wasn't enough, he's infusing interpretation into that.
Yeah.
But do the people in the congregation know that?
Probably not.
Probably not.
I haven't been taught. I mean,
Right.
and it's so funny because, like that's a great example of a passage that, that should be like super clear what's going on. It's at the very beginning of the Bible. There's not much that comes right before Genesis 3, Genesis 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And
two chapters.
Yeah. And it's like, how can you miss the mark of like the flow of scripture so bad when there's only 2 chapters? Like did you not even read like the commands?
You don't even need the 2 chapters. You just need like a few verses before chapter 3.
I guess.
Just the setup for what happened. Actually, you could even get by with just chapter 3.
Yeah.
If you wanted to.
Yeah. You could, because it refers back, and so it's like, but even there, like it's pretty clear. Adam and Eve have sinned. Their eyes are open. They know that they've sinned. They know that they've done wrong, and that's why they're covering up. And so to say,
who told you that you sinned?
Right. It's like what?
Yeah.
God makes no sense.
Yeah.
And it's just it's off the wall.
Yeah.
And even when we see idolatry in the Bible. As far as worshiping things that aren't God, it's like, no, it's pretty clear. Like our worship is to be directed towards God and God alone. Right? At the very end of Revelation, John is before one of God's angels, and he falls down and starts worshiping the angel. Right? The angel's like, get up, don't worship me. Worship goes to God alone.
Yeah, the only even close to passages that I could think of that you could make a case for are the passages that says that God will exalt us, but clearly it's not talking about worship.
Right.
Even worship and exaltation are 2 different things. The exaltation that we have is in the sense of we are sharing in the exaltation of Christ. But again, that's very different than worship.
Oh yeah, big time.
Yeah.
So that was a fun one.
I like that. I kind of want to see the rest of it, but
I'll send you the link.
Yeah, Judy, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, he's crazy.
He's crazy. I kind of want to know what church this is.
It's on the description over there.
Yeah, we should do a fun digging deeper investigation where we go to these churches.
Can we?
Yeah, I think Pastor Lee would give us the day off to go to these.
Maybe not.
My phone's ringing. That's a good time to end this.
This guy's in Washington.
Bellevue,
Washington.
All right, we'll make a trip. My phone's ringing, so we'll go ahead and end this. We are glad that y'all joined us today for Digging Deep Podcast. We'll see y'all next week.